Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Phoenix Rising, her fingers tracing the sturdy metallic railing as she watched the endless expanse of stars before her. The ship's exposed machinery hummed beneath her feet, a symphony of human engineering that had taken decades to perfect. Unlike the crystalline vessels of the galactic hegemony that surrounded them in the docking bay, the Phoenix Rising wore its heart on its sleeve. Every pipe, every connection, every carefully crafted component visible and proud. "Captain, the hegemony delegation has arrived." Lieutenant Rivera's voice came through the intercom, carrying the hint of tension. "They're requesting permission to board for the inspection." Sarah straightened her midnight blue uniform, adorned with the silver phoenix emblem of Earth's first deep space initiative. "Grant them access, Lieutenant. Let's show our guests what humanity has achieved." The main airlock cycled open with a satisfying hiss. Through it glided 3 Arxian representatives, their crystalline environmental suits catching the light and sending rainbow refractions dancing across the walls. Their species had mastered space travel when humans were still fighting with swords, and they never let anyone forget it. "This is interesting construction." The lead delegate, Ambassador Zerix, spoke through their universal translator. The slight pause before interesting carried volumes of condescension. "Very industrial. Very robust." The word primitive hung unspoken in the air. "Thank you, Ambassador," Sarah replied with a measured smile. "We believe in practical engineering solutions. Would you like to see the engine room?" The Arxians followed her through the corridors, their crystalline forms seeming to shrink away from the exposed conduits and machinery. Sarah caught them exchanging what passed for amused glances among their kind, subtle shifts in their crystalline structure that created momentary prisms of light. The engine room doors parted to reveal Chief Engineer Marcus Wong supervising final calibrations with his team. The chamber was massive, dominated by the quantum fold drive, humanity's first faster-than-light engine. Unlike the elegant, almost organic drives of the hegemony, the QF drive was a marvel of interconnected systems, each component visibly linked to the next in a dance of purpose and function. "This is your propulsion system." Ambassador Zerix's translator couldn't quite mask the incredulity in their tone. "It seems rather energetic." Marcus looked up from his console, his dark eyes twinkling with barely suppressed pride. "Every component serves a purpose, Ambassador. We found that sometimes the most direct path between 2 points isn't through conventional space at all." Sarah watched as her chief engineer launched into an explanation of the drive's principles. The Arxians' crystalline forms shifted in patterns she'd learned to recognize as dismissive amusement. They didn't understand, couldn't understand, that what they saw as crude engineering actually represented an entirely new approach to faster-than-light travel. The Phoenix Rising didn't bend space like hegemony ships. It didn't create wormholes or surf gravitational waves. Instead, it did something the hegemony had never considered possible. It manipulated the quantum probability of being in 2 places at once, then collapsed the wave function in their favor. The exposed machinery wasn't a sign of primitive engineering. It was necessary for the precise spatial calculations required for each jump. "Well," Ambassador Zerix concluded as the tour ended, "we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm for joining the galactic community. However, we recommend several centuries of further development before attempting any significant deep space travel. The galaxy can be quite dangerous for developing species." Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile. "We understand your concern, Ambassador. Rest assured, Phoenix Rising will exceed all safety protocols during our scheduled test flights." After the delegation departed, Sarah returned to the observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the Arxian ship, a gorgeous construct of living crystal that seemed to grow out of space itself. Beautiful, elegant, and completely blind to other possibilities. "They still think we're just copying their homework, don't they?" Marcus joined her at the railing, his dark eyes reflecting the starlight. Sarah nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Let them think what they want. Tomorrow we make our first official jump, and then... She let the sentence hang. Knowing what would come next would change everything. Sometimes the greatest advantage was being underestimated. The phoenix rising hummed beneath them, ready to show the galaxy that humanity's path to the stars would be uniquely their own. The Centauri Gateway Station hung in space like a frozen firework, its crystalline spires catching and refracting the light of Alpha Centauri's binary stars. The Phoenix Rising looked distinctly out of place among the elegant hegemony ships, its metallic hull and exposed systems drawing curious stares from the station's varied inhabitants. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong sat in the engine room, his eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't exist. The quantum sensors, integrated throughout the ship's visible systems, were picking up something impossible, ripples in spacetime that flickered just beyond conventional detection. Captain Chen to engineering. His comm system chimed. How are those calibrations coming along? Marcus glanced at the central display, where the anomalous readings pulsed like a heartbeat. Captain, I think you need to see this. Something's singing to our sensors. Sarah arrived minutes later, her practiced diplomatic smile fading as she studied the readings. Dr. Aisha Patel, their quantum physicist, had joined them, her dark eyes widening as she processed the data streams. These patterns, Aisha murmured, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. They're not random. Look at the frequency distribution. It's almost like... Like what? Sarah leaned closer. Like someone left their fingerprints on spacetime itself. Aisha finished. Our quantum fold drive doesn't just move through space. It interacts with the quantum fabric of reality. We're seeing echoes that the hegemony ships can't detect because they never thought to look for them. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Phoenix Rising. This is station control. Your docking permit expires in 30 minutes. Please prepare for departure or file for extension. Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. The hegemony had granted them limited access to the station, clearly expecting the primitive human vessel to require frequent maintenance stops. Dr. Patel, can you isolate these readings? Find out where they're coming from? Sarah asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. Aisha nodded, her fingers never stopping their dance across the controls. The signal stronger towards the galactic rim. Whatever's causing these ripples, it's big, and it's getting closer. Marcus pulled up the ship's navigational display, overlaying it with their quantum sensor data. The regular patterns of hegemony shipping lanes were visible as faint traces, but beyond them, in the supposedly empty space near the rim, something massive was moving. We should report this to station control, Lieutenant Rivera suggested from his position at the communication station. Protocol requires. Protocol assumes we're using hegemony standard sensors, Sarah interrupted. If we report this now, they'll dismiss it as a malfunction in our primitive systems. We need more data. The engine room hummed with tension as the crew worked. They had discovered something unprecedented, but would anyone believe them? The hegemony's technological arrogance had become doctrine over millennia of undisputed dominance. Look at this, Aisha suddenly called out. She expanded a section of the sensor readings, revealing a complex pattern that pulsed with mathematical precision. These aren't natural fluctuations. Whatever's causing them, it's artificial and massive in scale. Sarah studied the pattern, her expression hardening. How many of these signatures are you detecting? At least 12 distinct sources, Marcus answered, his voice grave. All moving in formation. The implications hung heavy in the air. 12 massive objects, invisible to standard sensors, approaching from the galactic rim. Sarah thought of humanity's brief history among the stars, of the dismissive attitudes they'd encountered, of the hegemony's unshakable belief in their own superiority. File for that docking extension, she ordered. Dr. Patel, I want a complete analysis of these signatures. Marcus, see if you can refine the sensors. Get us more detail. Whatever's out there, we need to know more before we take this to the council. As her crew sprang into action, Sarah gazed out at the crystalline splendor of Centauri Gateway Station. The hegemony had built wonders, but their certainty in their own perfection had left them blind. Humanity's primitive approach had revealed something they'd missed, something that sent chills down her spine. The quantum sensors continued their silent warning, counting down to a revelation that would shake the galaxy's foundations. The Phoenix Rising emerged from its quantum fold at the edge of charted space, its sensors immediately alive with data. Here, far from the gleaming certainties of hegemony space, the shadows between stars seemed deeper, more purposeful. Quantum echo patterns are stronger here, Dr. Paddle reported from her station, dark circles under her eyes betraying countless hours of analysis. Whatever we detected at Centauri, this is definitely its source. Sarah stood at the command center, studying the holographic display that showed what conventional sensors claimed was empty space. Their modified quantum sensors told a different story. Massive objects moved through the void, each larger than the biggest hegemony dreadnought. Multiple contacts, Marcus called out, his voice tense. Counting 15. No, 18 distinct signatures. They're maintaining some kind of formation. Lieutenant Rivera's console chimed. Captain, we're being hailed. It's the hegemony patrol ship Crystalline Dawn. They're demanding to know why we ventured beyond authorized space. The sleek crystalline vessel appeared on their view screen, its organic curves a stark contrast to the Phoenix Rising's industrial aesthetic. Commander Lyrix's crystalline form shimmered with barely contained irritation. Captain Chen, your vessel is not rated for deep space operations. Return to your assigned lanes immediately. Sarah straightened, meeting the commander's gaze. Commander, we've detected anomalies that require investigation. Our sensors show. Your primitive sensors are clearly malfunctioning, Lyrix interrupted. This sector has been regularly patrolled for centuries. There is nothing here that would escape hegemony detection. As if in answer to the commander's certainty, the quantum sensors screamed a warning. One of the shadow ships had moved, passing directly between them and the Crystalline Dawn. On their enhanced displays, they watched as a void in space, massive and purpose-driven, slid past the oblivious hegemony vessel. They can't see them at all, Aisha whispered, horrified fascination in her voice. The hegemony sensors are completely blind to them. Sarah made a decision. Commander, we're transmitting our sensor data now. Please review it with an open mind. These readings. Enough. Lyrix's crystalline form pulsed with annoyance. Your persistence in pushing human inadequacies onto hegemony operations is trying my patience. Return to your assigned space or face impoundment. Sarah turned to her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. They had spent months tracking these shadows, refining their sensors, gathering evidence. The hegemony's dismissal wasn't just frustrating, it was dangerous. Plot a course back to Earth, she ordered, loud enough for the still open channel to hear. Then, switching to their secure internal comm, she added, but first, Marcus, I want everything. Full sensor sweep, quantum trace analysis, gravitational mapping. If these shadows are what I think they are, we need proof that even the hegemony can't ignore. The Phoenix Rising turned away from the Crystalline Dawn, its exposed systems continuing their relentless data collection. Through their enhanced sensors, they watched the shadow ships continuing their silent maneuvers, testing, probing, preparing. Look at their movement patterns, Aisha noted, highlighting sections of data. They're not just passing through. They're establishing positions, like pieces on a chessboard. Sarah studied the tactical display, where 18 massive shadows gradually spread out along the galaxy's edge. The hegemony's arrogance had left them vulnerable, their certainty in their own superiority blinding them to new threats and new possibilities. Send everything we have to Earth, she ordered. Every scrap of data, every analysis, every theory, and prepare a formal presentation for the Galactic Council. They might dismiss our technology, but they can't ignore a threat of this magnitude. Not if we can prove it exists. As the Phoenix Rising began its journey home, its quantum sensors continued mapping the shadows' movements. Behind them, In the darkness between stars, ancient engines stirred to life, preparing for a war that only humanity could see coming. The race to save a galaxy that mocked them had begun. Earth's Orbital Defense Center hummed with activity, its meeting chambers filled with the world's brightest minds. Dr. Aisha Patel stood before a holographic display of the quantum sensor data, her hands steady despite the weight of her revelation. The shadow ships aren't just moving through space, she explained, highlighting patterns in the quantum distortions. They're changing it. Each passage leaves a trace, like fingers dragging through water, but at a quantum level. Admiral Chen, Sarah's mother and head of Earth's defense fleet, leaned forward. And you're certain the hegemony can't detect these changes? Their sensors are too sophisticated, Marcus answered from his position near the engineering displays. They've refined their technology to filter out quantum noise. To them, these massive disturbances look like background radiation. The Phoenix Rising's discovery had sparked a secret revolution in human space. While the hegemony continued to dismiss their warnings, Earth's scientists worked tirelessly to understand the threat. 5 more ships had been fitted with quantum fold drives and enhanced sensors, their primitive design now a deliberate choice rather than a limitation. Sarah studied the latest tactical projections. The Shadow Fleet has almost completed their encirclement. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon. Then what we're attempting must happen sooner, Dr. James Henderson announced, entering the chamber with a team of quantum physicists. Captain Chen, your ship's drive system gave us the key. We'd found a way to weaponize the quantum fold effect. A holographic display shifted, showing simulations of localized space-time distortions. The mathematics behind it was revolutionary, a combination of human intuition and quantum mechanics that the hegemony's rigid thinking would never have conceived. The shadow ships leave quantum traces because they exist partially outside normal space, Aisha explained, her excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. If we can generate a strong enough quantum field, we might be able to force them fully into our reality. Or tear them apart trying, Marcus added, already calculating power requirements. Admiral Chen's expression remained stern. The Hegemony Council meets in 3 days to discuss our unfounded warnings. How soon can these modifications be ready? The Phoenix Rising can be upgraded in 36 hours, Marcus replied. The sister ships will take another day after that. Sarah watched the simulation loop again, showing how their quantum drives could be transformed into weapons against an enemy that technically didn't exist. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity's flawed approach to space travel might be the galaxy's only hope. There's something else, Aisha said quietly, manipulating the sensor data. Look at the quantum signature of the shadow ships. The pattern. It's familiar. She overlaid it with readings from ancient astronomical data. These distortions match signals we detected centuries ago, just before the Dark Age in human history. They've been here before. The revelation sent a chill through the chamber. Humanity's mysterious Dark Age, a period of global technological regression that had puzzled historians for centuries, might not have been an accident. They're shepherds, Sarah realized, pieces clicking into place. They wait for civilizations to reach a certain point, then push them back into darkness. The hegemony's technological stagnation isn't just arrogance, it's by design. Admiral Chen's decision was immediate. Begin the modifications. Captain Chen, your ship will leave the defense fleet. Dr. Patel, Dr. Henderson, you have 24 hours to perfect the quantum weapon design. If we're right about this, we're not just fighting for ourselves. As the meeting dispersed into focused activity, Sarah found herself at the observation window, watching shuttles ferry supplies and personnel between ships. 6 vessels, considered primitive by hegemony standards, preparing to face an ancient enemy that had shaped galactic civilization from the shadows. Quite a symphony we're composing. Aisha joined her, holding tablets filled with calculations, using quantum mechanics to save the galaxy. Sarah smiled slightly. The best symphonies often come from unexpected instruments. She turned to her friend and quantum physicist, Let's make sure this one has a proper crescendo. Above them, the Phoenix Rising waited in space dock, its exposed systems now housing humanity's greatest secret, and perhaps the galaxy's only hope for breaking an ancient cycle of enforced ignorance. The hegemony's primary shipyard at Proxima Centauri shattered like a crystal chandelier. Sarah watched through the Phoenix Rising's quantum-enhanced sensors as shadow ships phased through the station's defenses, their passage leaving reality itself distorted in their wake. The hegemony's proud crystalline vessels, previously thought invincible, crumbled before weapons they couldn't even detect. Multiple distress signals across all frequencies, Lieutenant Rivera reported, his console alive with emergency beacons. The hegemony fleet is in full retreat from sectors 7 through 13. The Phoenix Rising led its small fleet of 6 ships through the chaos, their primitive systems now their greatest advantage. Through their enhanced sensors, they could see the Shadow Fleet's pattern, a methodical destruction of key technological centers, pushing civilization back sector by sector. Quantum signatures are intensifying, Aisha called from her station. They're not just destroying infrastructure, they're altering the fabric of space-time itself. Each attack leaves a permanent degradation in technological capability. Sarah's tactical display showed the horror unfolding across hegemony space. The shadow ships moved with terrible purpose, targeting shipyards, research stations, and manufacturing centers. Centuries of progress were being systematically erased. Captain, Marcus's voice carried an edge of discovery. Look at the quantum wake patterns. They're not random. They're forming a network, like a web of technological suppression. A priority transmission cut through their analysis. Ambassador Xerx's crystalline form appeared on the main screen, their usual composure shattered. This is a general distress call to all vessels. Unknown forces are attacking across all sectors. Our weapons have no effect. Our sensors detect nothing. We require immediate. The transmission cut off as another shadow ship passed through the hegemony's central communication hub, leaving it a drifting wreck of fractured crystal. All ships, battle formation Delta, Sarah commanded. The 6 human vessels moved into position, their exposed systems humming with power as they prepared their modified quantum drives. Dr. Patel, status of the quantum field generators. Synchronized and ready, Aisha replied. If our calculations are correct, a coordinated pulse should force them into normal space. But Captain, she hesitated, the power requirements mean we'll only get one shot at this. Sarah watched as another hegemony defense station collapsed, its elegant architecture reduced to spinning debris. They had trained for this moment, but seeing the actual devastation brought home the stakes. This wasn't just about saving the hegemony. It was about preventing another dark age for all civilizations. Shadow Fleet approaching Centauri Gateway Station, Marcus reported. Their current course will take them directly through the primary refugee evacuation route. Sarah's decision was instant. All ships, full power to quantum field generators. Target the Lid shadow ship. Let's show them what primitive technology can do. The Phoenix Rising's exposed systems pulsed with energy as power redirected to the modified drive. Around them, their sister ships did the same, their crude design now revealing its true purpose. Each exposed component acted as part of a massive quantum antenna, ready to tear a hole in the shadow ship's dimensional sanctuary. Quantum field synchronization at 98%, Aisha announced. Shadow ships entering optimal range in 5, 4. Sarah watched the massive void in space approach, remembering every dismissive comment, every condescending review of human technology. The shadow ships had counted on the galaxy's civilizations following the hegemony's lead, becoming so focused on refinement that they lost sight of alternative approaches. 2, 1. All ships, fire. 6 quantum drives activated simultaneously, their modified fields reaching out across space like fingers of lightning. The shadow ship's outline suddenly became visible to normal sensors as reality itself buckled around it. For the first time in history, the ancient enemy was exposed. Through the chaos of battle, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes, the greatest innovations came from those who didn't know what was supposed to be impossible. Reality rippled like water as the quantum pulse struck the lead shadow ship. For a brief moment, the massive vessel became visible to normal space, a nightmare of impossible geometries and dark energy constructs that defied conventional physics. The Phoenix Rising sensors recorded everything, each exposed component gathering crucial data about their ancient enemy. Direct hit, Marcus called out, his fingers dancing across engineering controls. Their dimensional phasing is destabilizing. They're being pulled into normal space. The shadow ship tried to retreat, but the combined quantum fields of 6 human vessels held it firmly. Around them, the rest of the shadow fleet hesitated, their methodical advance halted by this unexpected resistance. Multiple quantum signatures shifting, Aisha reported, excitement breaking through her professional tone. They're attempting to compensate, but our field is interfering with their dimensional technology. Captain, we're actually doing it. Sarah watched as the trapped shadow ship became fully visible to conventional sensors. Across all frequencies, hegemony vessels registered shock as their sophisticated systems finally detected what humanity had seen all along. The mysterious enemy was exposed, their greatest advantage stripped away. All ships maintain quantum field integrity, Sarah commanded. Dr. Patel, begin full spectrum analysis. Let's learn everything we can about. The shadow ship's response cut her off. It released a pulse of dark energy that warped space-time itself, attempting to break free. The Phoenix Rising shuddered as its quantum field generators strained against the massive force. Field generators at 120% capacity, Marcus warned. The containment system wasn't designed for this kind of power. Sarah watched as warning indicators flashed across her tactical display. The shadow ship's struggle was threatening to tear apart their quantum fields. But in its desperate attempt to escape, it was also revealing its weaknesses. Look at the energy pattern, Aisha called out suddenly. Their dimensional shifting isn't just technology, it's mathematical. They're using quantum uncertainty itself to exist between states. But if we modify our field frequency to match their oscillation, we can force them to collapse into a single state, Sarah finished, understanding immediately. Marcus, can you reconfigure the quantum drive to match their frequency? Already on it, he replied, the exposed systems of the Phoenix Rising adapting in real time, transmitting new configurations to the fleet now. The shadow ship's struggles became more violent as the human vessels adjusted their quantum fields. Around them, the rest of the shadow fleet began to move, realizing the danger to their companion. Multiple shadow signatures converging on our position, Lieutenant Rivera reported. They're attempting to surround us. Sarah smiled grimly. Perfect. All ships, prepare to release quantum containment on my mark. Dr. Patel, plot a resonance pattern that will chain between targets. Understanding dawned on her crew's faces. The shadow ship's dimensional technology made them virtually invincible, but it also meant they all operated on the same quantum frequency. If they could force one ship's dimensional collapse, the effect could cascade through the entire fleet. Resonance pattern calculated, Aisha confirmed. But Captain, this level of quantum manipulation, it could affect normal space in ways we can't predict. Better than letting them push us all back into the dark ages, Sarah responded. All ships, synchronize quantum fields to Dr. Patel's calculations. Prepare for full power surge on my mark. The shadow fleet closed in, confident in their superiority over these primitive vessels. They didn't realize that humanity's exposed systems and direct approach to engineering had created something unprecedented, a way to turn their own dimensional mastery against them. Shadow fleet in optimal position, Marcus reported. Field generators at maximum capacity. Sarah took a deep breath, watching as the trap prepared to spring. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. Sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. All ships, release. The quantum cascade rippled through space like a wave breaking on an invisible shore. Shadow ships materialized across the sector, their dimensional technology disrupted by the resonating field. The Phoenix Rising's exposed systems captured every detail as the ancient enemy was forced into normal space, their secrets laid bare for the first time in millennia. Quantum resonance spreading beyond initial targets, Aisha reported, her voice filled with wonder. The effect is self-sustaining. Their entire network is destabilizing. Through the main viewport, Sarah watched as shadow ships became visible to conventional sensors. The hegemony fleet, which had been retreating in disorder, now paused as their sophisticated systems finally registered the threat they'd dismissed for so long. Incoming transmission from the Shadow Fleet, Lieutenant Rivera announced, surprise evident in his tone. They're requesting terms. The main screen activated, revealing the true form of their adversary for the first time. The being that appeared was composed of shifting patterns of dark energy, its form barely contained within normal spacetime. When it spoke, its words translated directly into their minds. "You have done the impossible," the entity stated. "In all our cycles of guardianship, no species has ever detected us, let alone developed countermeasures." Sarah stood tall at her command station. "Guardianship? You mean technological suppression, forcing civilizations backwards to maintain your concept of order." "We preserve balance," the entity responded. "Allow unlimited technological growth, and species inevitably destroy themselves. We guide. We prune. We maintain harmony. You enforce stagnation," Marcus countered from engineering. "You've created a galaxy where innovation is discouraged, where thinking differently is seen as primitive." The entity's form rippled with what might have been consideration. Around them, more shadow ships were appearing in normal space, their dimensional technology continuing to fail as the quantum cascade spread. "Your species is unique," the entity acknowledged. "You saw what others ignored. You built with purpose rather than elegance. Perhaps there is wisdom in diversity we had not considered." Ambassador Xerx's voice cut through the channel. "Captain Chen, the Hegemony Council is convening an emergency session. They request your immediate presence and your insights." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Tell them we'll be there shortly. First, we need to establish some new understanding with our guests." The next hours passed in a flurry of diplomatic activity. The shadow entities, their dimensional superiority neutralized by human innovation, agreed to cease their cycles of technological suppression. In return, humanity shared their quantum field technology, not as a weapon, but as a means for different species to study and understand each other's approaches to science and progress. "The hegemony scientists are already adapting our quantum detection systems to their crystalline technology," Aisha reported, reviewing the preliminary data exchanges. "They're finding ways to merge our direct approach with their refined techniques. The possibilities are extraordinary." Sarah walked through the Phoenix Rising's corridors, now bustling with mixed teams of human and hegemony engineers. Where once there had been mockery of exposed systems and visible components, there was now genuine curiosity and collaboration. The shadow entities weren't entirely wrong, Marcus commented as they reached the observation deck. "Unlimited technological growth without understanding can be dangerous." But their solution was worse than the problem. "Sometimes the best path forward isn't the most elegant one," Sarah replied, watching as hegemony ships began incorporating visible sensor arrays and power distribution systems into their crystalline architecture. "Sometimes you need to see the machinery to understand how it works." A group of young hegemony engineers passed by, their crystalline forms shimmering with excitement as they studied the Phoenix Rising's quantum drive designs. The ship that had once been mocked as primitive was now the centerpiece of a technological and cultural revolution. "We're receiving requests from 17 different species to join the technical exchange program," Lieutenant Rivera reported. "Everyone wants to learn our primitive approach to quantum mechanics." Sarah smiled, remembering all the dismissive comments and condescending attitudes they'd endured. "Send them all the same response. The best innovations come from seeing things differently." Welcome to the future. 20 years after the Shadow Fleet incident, the Phoenix Rising rested in its place of honor at the Center for Interstellar Innovation. Its exposed systems, once a source of mockery, now drew students from across the galaxy who came to study how humanity had changed the course of civilization. Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood before a group of mixed-species cadets, her silver-streaked hair and experienced eyes reflecting 2 decades of progress. Behind her, the ship's quantum drive hummed softly, kept operational as a living testament to the power of thinking differently. The Phoenix Rising wasn't just a ship, she explained to her attentive audience. It was a statement about the nature of progress itself. Sometimes the cleanest solution isn't the best one. Sometimes you need to see the gears turning to understand how to make them turn better. A young Arxian cadet raised their crystalline form, light refracting through their structure in a pattern that indicated deep curiosity. "Admiral, is it true that the shadow entities now serve as technological advisors?" Sarah nodded, gesturing to a dark energy construct floating peacefully near the ceiling. The entity, once part of the force that had threatened galactic civilization, now helped monitor technological development, not to suppress it, but to guide it toward sustainable paths. They saw in humanity something they had forgotten in their eons of existence, she replied. That diversity of thought, of approach, of solution, isn't a weakness to be corrected. It's the greatest strength any civilization can possess. Dr. Aisha Patel, her hair now gray but her eyes still bright with curiosity, emerged from the Phoenix Rising's engine room. She was followed by Marcus Wong, who had retired from engineering to teach at the center. Both carried the confidence of people who had helped reshape the galaxy's understanding of technology. "Today's demonstration will show you something remarkable," Aisha announced. "We've integrated hegemony crystalline computing with human quantum field technology and shadow entity dimensional physics. 3 approaches that once seemed incompatible, now working in perfect harmony." The students gathered around as Marcus activated a holographic display. Above them, a new type of drive system appeared, one that combined the elegance of crystalline technology, the directness of human engineering, and the dimensional understanding of the shadow entities. "This is the future we created," Marcus explained, his weathered hands moving through the hologram. "Not by forcing one approach over others, but by learning from each perspective. The Phoenix Rising taught us that every civilization has something unique to offer." Sarah watched as the students, representing dozens of species, worked together to understand the principles being demonstrated. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies of technological advancement, now there was collaboration and mutual respect. A small liller chimed from her communication device. The first deep space expedition using the new hybrid drive technology was ready to launch. The vessel, crewed by a mixed-species team, would venture beyond the galaxy's edge, not in fear of what they might find, but with curiosity about what they could learn. The shadow entities believed they were preserving the galaxy by enforcing technological conformity. Sarah addressed the class one final time. They didn't realize that true stability comes from diversity, from the exchange of ideas, from learning to see through each other's eyes. As if in response, the quantum drive of the Phoenix Rising pulsed gently, its exposed systems still teaching new generations about the importance of understanding the machinery of progress. The ship that had once been laughed at now stood as a symbol of how far they had come, and how far they could still go. "Remember this," Sarah concluded, touching the ship's hull with respect. "The next time someone mocks your ideas or calls your approach primitive, remember the Phoenix Rising. Remember that the greatest discoveries often come from those willing to think differently, to show their work, to embrace the complexity of innovation rather than hide it behind false elegance." Outside the center's windows, ships of all designs moved through space, some crystalline, some mechanical, some barely visible to normal space. Each represented a unique approach to the same challenges, each contributing to a galaxy that had finally learned to celebrate its differences rather than suppress them. The Phoenix Rising had done more than save civilization. It had taught it how to grow.